In Buddhism, the concept of anta refers to the extremes, often expressed as the two extremes or avoiding the extremes. This idea is prominently discussed in the context of the middle way, Majjhima Patipata, a fundamental principle taught by the Buddha. The two extremes represent 1. Sensual pleasure, Kamasu Kolikanu Yoga. This extreme involves indulging in sensual pleasures, such as excessive pursuit of material wealth, sensual desires, and hedonistic pleasures. The Buddha recognized that such indulgence can lead to attachment, craving, and ultimately suffering, as these pleasures are impermanent and unsatisfactory. The term is composed of two parts. A, this refers to sensual or sensory pleasures, often associated with the pleasures derived from the five senses: sight, sound, taste, touch, and smell. It encompasses desires for enjoyable experiences related to the physical world. B. Sukhalikanu Yoga. This compound term can be broken down into sukha, pleasure or happiness, and alika, pursuit or adherence. Hence, it implies the pursuit or adherence to sensual pleasure and happiness. The Buddha recognized that the pursuit of sensual pleasure, when done in an uncontrolled and unrestrained manner, can lead to attachment, craving, and suffering. This extreme is rooted in the understanding that sensual experiences are impermanent, unsatisfactory, and lack lasting fulfillment. Overindulgence in sensual pleasures can result in a cycle of desire, attachment, and discontentment, reinforcing the cycle of samsara, the continuous cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. In his teachings, the Buddha did not advocate the complete renunciation of sensory experiences. Instead, he encouraged a balanced and mindful approach to sensual pleasures. Practitioners are advised to exercise moderation, cultivate contentment, and develop awareness of the impermanent and unsatisfactory nature of such pleasures. One of the well-known stories related to the theme of sensual pleasure, Kamasu Kolikana Yoga, in the time of the Buddha, is the story of Kisagotami. Kisagotami was a young woman who experienced a series of tragic events. She lost her only child, and grief-stricken, she went from house to house, asking for medicine to bring her child back to life. People, recognizing her deep sorrow, directed her to the Buddha. The Buddha, understanding her emotional state, gave her a task. He asked her to bring a mustard seed from a house where no one had experienced the death of a loved one. Kisagotami eagerly went from house to house, but in every home, she found someone who had experienced the pain of loss. After facing the universal reality of suffering and death, Kisagotami began to understand the impermanence of life and the nature of human existence. She returned to the Buddha, who compassionately guided her in the Dharma. She eventually became a bhikkhuni, nun, and attained enlightenment. This story illustrates the Buddha's teachings on the unsatisfactory nature of sensual pleasure and the inevitability of suffering in human life. Kisagotami's journey reflects the transformative power of wisdom and understanding in the face of the challenges posed by the impermanence of worldly pleasures. 2. Self-mortification or asceticism, Atthakilamathanu Yoga. On the opposite end, the Buddha discouraged extreme forms of self-mortification or ascetic practices that involve severe austerities and physical hardships. While some individuals in ancient India believed that extreme asceticism could lead to spiritual purification, the Buddha found that it often led to physical debilitation, without necessarily contributing to genuine insight and liberation. The term can be broken down into 8. Atthakilamattha. This refers to self-mortification, self-dormant, or ascetic practices that involve subjecting the body to harsh conditions, deprivation, and extreme penances. B. Anu Yoga. This term implies the adherence or pursuit of self-mortification, as a means to attain spiritual goals. The Buddha himself experimented with extreme ascetic practices. Before his enlightenment, he practiced severe fasting, enduring extreme physical hardships, and almost reaching the point of emaciation. However, he realized that such extreme practices did not lead to true understanding or liberation. Instead, they resulted in physical weakness and did not address the root causes of suffering. The Buddha then advocated the middle way, a path that avoids both extreme sensual indulgence and extreme asceticism. He emphasized the importance of a balanced approach to spiritual practice, while recognizing the value of self-discipline and ethical conduct. The Buddha discouraged practices that cause harm to oneself or others, as well as those that do not contribute to genuine insight into the nature of suffering. This story serves as a profound illustration of the dangers of self-mortification and the transformative power of finding a balanced and mindful path on the journey to enlightenment. The middle way, as advocated by the Buddha, is a balanced and moderate path between these two extremes. It suggests avoiding the pitfalls of excessive sensual indulgence and extreme asceticism. Instead, practitioners are encouraged to follow a path of ethical conduct, mental development, and wisdom, a balanced approach that leads to understanding the nature of suffering and the attainment of liberation.